Welcome to the debate. So if a train crossing light flashes red, it means exactly one thing.
Right. Stop.
Yeah, stop. Danger is coming. It is a completely objective system. It's binary. And it certainly doesn't change its meaning depending on who happens to be driving the car approaching the tracks.
That would be a terrible system.
It would be a disaster, right? But when we look at modern human relationships, that objective warning system completely collapses. It just falls apart. Like if a man checks his partner's phone behind her back, his friends might tell him to, trust his gut.
Right. Yeah.
But if a woman does the exact same thing, she's often just called paranoid or crazy. So today we're diving into some really fascinating research on relationship dynamics and how we interpret partner behaviors.
Yeah. It's a dense one today.
It is, and it brings up a massive point of tension. Basically, are we suffering from an entrenched sexist double standard where identical behaviors are judged differently based on gender?
Right.
Or, on the other hand, has internet culture and social media simply convinced us that every minor annoyance is a toxic clinical red flag? So I'll be arguing that gender bias is the fundamental corrupting force here.
And I will be taking the position that the deeper failure is the semantic dilution of the term red flag itself. Like we've turned it into a catch-all for normal, non-pathological behaviors.
So let's get into it. I mean, look at how people actually evaluate behavior out in the real world.
Yeah.
The whole framework of evaluating behavior is fundamentally corrupted by hypocritical gender norms.
Well, but...
We like to think we are judging an action objectively, but we're really just judging the actor.
Okay, but how are you defining the action? Because a structural failure in engineering is undeniable, like your train example.
Right.
But when we talk about human red flags, we're dealing with a system where everyone is reading the signs entirely differently.
But that's exactly my point.
Right, but the way I see it, while those double standards are very real, the much bigger issue is that the very term red flag has been totally watered down.
In what way?
Well, we're treating everyday normal relationship friction as a severe pathology. We're acting like standard relationship problems are these massive warning signs.
I get that, but I look at this and see a system where you can't even separate those diagnoses from gender. Like, take the mechanism of jealousy. If a guy gets jealous because his girlfriend is talking to another man, society has this built-in script that frames it positively.
I mean, sometimes, yeah.
You hear things like, oh, he's protective, or he really cares about her. It's seen as a marker of investment.
Right, tied to those antiquated ideas of men as protectors.
Exactly, protectors of their domain. But the vocabulary completely flips when a woman does it.
Oh, for sure.
It is night and day. A woman doing the exact same thing is instantly slapped with the label controlling or insecure.
Yeah, the insecure label is huge there.
It is. And it happens with privacy too. We just mentioned the phone checking example earlier.
Right.
If a woman checks her boyfriend's phone because she suspects something, the consensus dismisses her as paranoid. But a man does it, and he is validated. He's told, bro, trust your instincts. We're taking identical behaviors and running them through a gendered filter that spits out completely opposite conclusions.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So the core issue isn't the behavior itself, it's the fact that the observer's bias completely dictates the reality of the situation. You just cannot fix relationship discourse until you address that baseline hypocrisy.
Right.
The red flag isn't what the partner did. The red flag is the gendered bias of the person evaluating it.
I don't deny those double standards exist. They absolutely do. But focusing on gender as the ultimate root of the current crisis, it kind of misses the forest for the trees.
How so?
Because before we can even argue about how gender skews a red flag, we have to reckon with the fact that the term itself has lost all practical meaning.
You think it's meaningless now?
Essentially, yeah. The real threat is the over-pathologization of basic human friction.
Oh, okay.
We've turned normal relationship speed bumps into a laundry list of psychological diagnoses.
So you see this more as an issue of how we categorize things rather than how we interpret them based on gender.
Yes, precisely. Because we are taking heavy clinical language and slapping it onto everyday annoyances.
Right.
Look at how psychological terms have entirely escaped the therapist's office and just flooded our social media feeds.
Oh, the therapy speak.
Yes, exactly. Therapy speak. It gives people a veneer of unearned authority.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. Like when you say, I'm annoyed that you didn't text me back, you're admitting to a personal feeling.
Which takes vulnerability.
Exactly. It requires vulnerability. But when you say your communication style is toxic and a massive red flag,
Oof. Yeah.
you have weaponized psychology to win an argument. You've diagnosed them.
Wow. Yeah, that is a big shift.
It is. You look at the advice dominating our feeds right now. Someone takes a few hours to reply to a text message and the internet screams, "Run, red flag."
Yeah, the hyperbole is real.
Or, a partner needs some alone time to decompress after work. Suddenly they're emotionally unavailable.
Right.
The definition of a red flag used to mean actual danger, like a warning sign of abuse, severe manipulation, something that threatens your safety.
Yeah, true danger.
But now it just means behavior that briefly inconvenienced me.
Right, it's diluted.
Completely. If we are sounding the air raid sirens because someone dropped a plate, the gender of the person dropping it is entirely secondary. The diagnostic tool itself is fundamentally broken.
Okay, I hear you saying the tool is broken universally, and the rise of therapy speak is definitely real. I won't argue that.
Yeah.
But the weaponization of those clinical terms is still intrinsically tied to gender.
How do you mean?
Let's look closer at the concept of control.
Okay.
If a man expresses discomfort with his girlfriend posting revealing pictures online, the immediate, widespread label applied to him is controlling.
Because communicating discomfort in that context is often diagnosed by society as an attempt to dictate what another person is allowed to do.
Right. Now contrast that with the phone checking example again.
Okay.
A woman checking her boyfriend's phone behind his back is a massive violation of privacy and autonomy.
Oh, absolutely.
It is, by definition, an attempt to control the flow of information and police his private life. Yet she manages to escape the controlling label and gets downgraded to just paranoid.
I see.
Think of gender as a distorted prism.
A prism?
Yeah, so the behavior itself, like expressing discomfort about a photo or looking through private messages, that behavior is just a beam of white light.
Okay.
But the second it hits that prism, it refracts.
Mm-hmm.
For men, that light refracts into the harsh, aggressive red of controlling.
I'm with you.
But for women, it bends into a softer, more dismissive yellow of paranoid or anxious.
Right.
The public never just sees the behavior. They only see the color the prism dictates.
That's an interesting analogy.
Right? You cannot untangle the misdiagnosis from the gender of the person involved.
Okay, the prism idea makes sense for how we judge behaviors. But it completely ignores the fact that we're pointing the prism at the wrong things.
What do you mean the wrong things?
Society has lost the ability to realize they're staring at a 40-watt light bulb, not a blinding laser.
Okay.
You pointed out that a man gets called controlling for expressing discomfort. But simply having boundaries is now widely labeled as a red flag across the board for both men and women.
It is definitely true that saying, I have a boundary, is often met with immense suspicion online. People hate it.
And it's completely backward. A boundary is the exact opposite of control.
Right.
Let's break down the psychology there. A boundary is about what I will tolerate.
Okay.
It's saying I cannot be in a relationship with someone who yells during arguments, so if you yell, I will leave the room.
Yeah, it's about your own behavior.
Exactly. It requires me to control my own actions. Control, on the other hand, is about dictating your actions. Like, you are not allowed to raise your voice.
Right. Forcing the other person to change.
Right, yet the social media ecosystem completely conflates the two.
Yeah, they use them interchangeably now.
We've lost a conceptual clarity to distinguish between a preference, a slight annoyance, a boundary, and actual course of control.
And why do you think that is? Just the internet being the internet?
Well, the reason why is simple. Nuance does not drive engagement. Outrage does.
Ah, yes. The algorithm.
Exactly. Categorizing any form of interpersonal friction, even healthy friction like asking for space, as a severe threat keeps people scrolling and clicking.
Yeah, it gets views.
There are literal videos out there telling people that if their partner needs constant reassurance, they're toxic.
Wow.
We are pathologizing a basic human need for connection. That machine is broken for everyone, men and women alike.
Okay, you're right about the internet stripping away context for the sake of engagement.
Right.
But that actually reinforces why we need a baseline metric to cut through the noise.
A metric like what?
Well, there is a specific mechanism in the source material to test the validity of our judgments. It's a sort of scientific control group for relationships.
Okay.
The gender reversal test.
Ah, yes.
You ask yourself, would I consider this behavior unacceptable if the genders were reversed?
Meaning you isolate the behavior from the societal expectation.
Exactly. In science, you isolate a variable to find the truth. If you want to know if a behavior is genuinely problematic or if you're just reacting to social conditioning, you have to swap the genders in your head.
Right, as an exercise.
If you think it's completely unacceptable for a man to demand his girlfriend's passwords, but you think it's perfectly fine for a woman to demand your boyfriend's passwords under the guise of trusting her intuition.
Yeah, the classic intuition defense.
Right. The test exposes your hypocrisy. It proves the behavior wasn't the issue, your bias was.
I see the logic there.
The reversal test is the only rigorous way to recalibrate our moral compass. It forces us to establish a baseline standard of acceptable human conduct, regardless of who is performing the action.
Okay, but
It forces cognitive dissonance, which is exactly what we need to break out of the scripts we've been handed.
establishing equity is important, sure. But equity in a broken system just means everyone gets the wrong diagnosis equally.
Wait, how is that the wrong diagnosis?
Because the gender reversal test is totally insufficient if the behavior shouldn't be considered a red flag in the first place.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Relying on it right now is like using WebMD to diagnose a common cold.
WebMD being famous for telling you a slight cough is actually a rare terminal illness.
Precisely. Let's look at the algorithmic incentive.
Okay.
If an influencer posts a video saying, relationships take work and sometimes your partner will annoy you, but you should communicate,
Right. Very reasonable advice.
they get 10 likes.
Yeah. Nobody clicks that.
But if they post a video saying, if your partner takes 4 hours to reply to a text, they are a narcissist and you need to run away.
They get 1 million views.
Exactly. They get 1 million views because it validates the viewer's anxiety. It gives the viewer a villain.
A villain, yeah.
So imagine social media tells you that delayed text is a terminal relationship illness.
Right.
If you apply your control group, if you ask, would I be this panicked if a man delayed his text versus a woman? You might say yes. Right. You might say, yes, a delayed text is equally toxic, regardless of gender.
Okay, I see.
Congratulations. You've achieved perfect gender equality in your diagnosis. But your diagnosis is still completely absurd.
Because the text delay wasn't a real red flag.
Exactly. Reversing the genders doesn't fix the underlying problem that the definition of a red flag has been watered down to nothing.
Right.
The test only works if the behavior first meets a rational, grounded definition of danger. If we're applying the reversal test to someone wanting alone time, we've completely lost the plot.
Okay, I get the WebMD comparison. If the baseline tool is hypersensitive, applying it equally just democratizes the panic.
That's a good way to phrase it, yeah.
But your argument assumes that we can easily agree on what a rational, grounded definition of a red flag is without gender interfering.
Well, we have definitions.
We do, but even the most clinical baseline definitions are hopelessly subjective.
I don't know about hopelessly.
Take the classic definition of a true red flag from the material. A repeated pattern of disrespect, manipulation, dishonesty, or control.
Which is a very solid, rigorous baseline. It separates the real threats from the minor inconveniences.
It's solid in theory.
Okay.
But in practice, what actually constitutes disrespect in our culture?
Well, obviously it varies, but
Let's dig into the why here. Societal norms dictate entirely different acceptable tones for men and women.
okay, yeah.
If a woman speaks forcefully to her male partner about something she wants changed, societal tropes are incredibly quick to label her as nagging, disrespectful, or emasculating.
That's true. The nagging stereotype is very prevalent.
But if a man speaks with the exact same forceful, uncompromising tone,
He's assertive.
he's viewed as assertive, he's taking charge or setting the standard.
Right.
And let's look at manipulation. Why do we see it differently? Women are heavily socialized from a young age to be accommodating, to keep the peace,
Right, the peacekeepers.
and to communicate their needs indirectly, because direct commands are often punished socially. But that indirect communication is then weaponized against them and labeled as manipulative.
I see that.
Meanwhile, a man's bluntness is excused as just being honest.
Right.
So even when you have the correct definition, disrespect, manipulation, control, the application of those words is fundamentally altered by gender. You can't escape the gender question, not even at the definitional level.
Cultural conditioning certainly affects how we perceive a word like disrespect. I don't dispute that the socialization you're describing exists.
Yeah.
But you are vastly underestimating the sheer destructive power of the modern digital ecosystem.
How so?
You're focusing on the subjective interpretation of the words, but there is a massive structural failure happening right now.
Which is?
The internet actively teaches people to completely bypass the core requirement of that definition you just read.
You mean the requirement that it has to be a repeated pattern?
Yes, a repeated pattern is the load-bearing pillar of a red flag.
Right. It takes time to establish.
A true warning sign requires data over time, but the advice ecosystem we're trapped in relies entirely on snapshots.
It removes time completely.
It removes time and context from the equation. The algorithms favor extreme, instantaneous reactions because, as we discussed, patience doesn't go viral.
No, it does not.
There are thousands of videos basically saying if they do this one micro action on the first date, run.
Oh yeah, the ick. The instant ick.
Right. When you remove time, when you refuse to wait and see if an action is a repeated pattern of disrespect or just someone having a bad Tuesday,
Yeah.
you actively conflate a momentary annoyance with systemic danger.
That is a really insidious shift.
It is. Relationships are inherently built on grace. The grace to let someone make a mistake and correct it.
Yeah.
But algorithms are built on judgment. They demand immediate pathologization. That structural failure rewires how human beings tolerate one another, and it completely transcends gender.
It gamifies relationship anxiety.
That is exactly what it does.
The algorithms don't incentivize the grace required to observe a pattern. They incentivize the immediate hit of dopamine you get from categorizing someone else as the problem.
Right. It's so much easier.
It is much easier to say, you are a walking red flag, than to say, we have a communication mismatch that we need to work through.
Exactly. And if we don't fix that foundational structural issue, the fact that we're diagnosing a cough as terminal based on a 10-second video clip,
Right.
then arguing over the gender dynamics of the diagnosis is basically rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. We have to stop the clinical misdiagnosis of standard relationship friction first before anything else.
Okay, you make a strong case for how the medium has corrupted the message.
Thank you.
But I still firmly believe that stripping away gender bias via that reversal test, asking, would I accept this if the genders were reversed, is the essential first step.
Even with the system broken?
Yes, because we simply cannot build healthy partnerships if we hold men and women to fundamentally different behavioral standards regarding jealousy, privacy, and control. Until we fix the hypocrisy, the labels will always be weaponized unevenly.
And I stand by the idea that resisting the clinical misdiagnosis of boundaries is the absolute foundation for healthy discourse.
Yeah.
If we don't push back against an internet culture that labels a need for alone time or a delayed text as toxic, we're going to find ourselves entirely unable to navigate the messy realities of partnering with another human being.
We'll just isolate ourselves.
We will isolate ourselves entirely because no one can live up to a standard where every mistake is a clinical red flag.
Despite coming at this from different angles, we do completely agree on the ultimate baseline here.
I think we do, yeah.
Genuine red flags must involve a verified, repeated pattern of dishonesty, manipulation, or control.
Absolutely. A genuine red flag requires data over time. It is not an isolated annoyance. It's not a delayed text message. And it is certainly not a partner attempting to establish a healthy boundary for themselves.
Navigating modern partnerships really requires a dual awareness. You have to understand your own susceptibility to deeply ingrained gender biases.
And you simultaneously have to understand your vulnerability to sensationalized, algorithm-driven advice that wants you to view your partner as a patient to be diagnosed rather than a person to be understood.
Right.
It requires an immense amount of self-reflection to ask yourself, am I reacting to a real threat, or am I reacting to a script someone else wrote for me?
There's a lot to unpack here, especially regarding how we individually define communicating a boundary versus dictating someone else's actions.
It's complex.
The line is incredibly fine, and it requires constant, honest communication to walk it. But we won't declare a definitive winner today.
No, we never do.
Instead, we leave it to you, the listener, to decide which force plays a larger role in your own life,
Is your judgment more clouded by societal gender standards, or are you more heavily influenced by an ecosystem that pathologizes our everyday friction?
It's a lot to think about.
It is. To bring it back to where we started, the warning lights in human relationships will never be as clear as the ones on a train track.
The machinery of human connection will always be messy.
It's up to us to make sure we're reading the signs correctly and not just seeing what we've been conditioned to see.